Well, hey everyone, it's Sean again, and welcome back to Walking the Path videos. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the mind and spirit. This is out of the section in the Manual for Teachers for A Course in Miracles that's called the Clarification of Terms. And the Course, speaks about the mind throughout the Course and throughout the teachings. And so it's good to understand why the mind is used and referenced in the teachings, because the Course is speaking to us at the level of the mind and not the level of the form, and it makes that distinction between the mind being of spirit and the form is of the ego. The ego always wants to make it about the form, the physical world, and so the mind is where all this is happening. It seems as if the world is outside of our mind, but it's actually in our minds, which is not an easy concept to accept. But once we finally start to understand it, it starts to make sense. So in this section, it starts out, the term mind is used to represent the activating agent of spirit supplying its creative energy. And so you can think of it, the mind is the activating agent of spirit. And so it's used for spirit when we are using it correctly. When the term is capitalized, and they're talking about in the Course, when the term is capitalized, it refers to God or Christ. An example, the mind of God or the mind of Christ. Spirit is the thought of God which He created like Himself. So spirit is just the thought of God. We are the Son of God is also the creation of God, the thought of God too. So we are the Son of God is spirit as a thought of God. The unified spirit is God's one Son or Christ. In this world, because the mind is split, the sons of God appear to be separate. So this world is, the Course refers to it in this world as it's just a symbol of the split mind. The mind, even though the mind can't be split or separate in truth, it appears to be split, and it's just a dream of separation. And so everything in this world is a symbol of that split, of the split mind. We have the duality is a symbol of the split mind. Everything in this world has this dual nature, and every degree and separation in between the two polar opposites of any duality a term of duality that we would use here. And so look at the body. All these bodies seem to be separate. And the organ in the body that symbolizes the mind is the brain, right? And it's split. So right there, the mind is showing us that we think that our brain is our mind. No, it's just an organ, because the body is actually in the mind. But the brain is symbolizing the split mind, because it is split. And so in this world, because the mind is split, the sons of God appear to be separate, nor do their minds seem to be joined. In this illusory state, the concept of an, quote, individual mind, unquote, seems to be meaningful. It is therefore described in the Course as if it has two parts, spirit and the ego. And so, yeah, we do think we have an individual mind because we have an individual self, identity, our separate identity. The word individual, you have the words divide and dual. Individuality, you have the words divide, dual, and duality. So, this is a separate idea. And so we think we have because we have a separate identity, we must have a separate mind, But actually all minds are joined. Spirit is the part that is still in contact with God through the Holy Spirit, who abides in this part, but sees the other part as well. The best way to think of the Holy Spirit that I read in The Disappearance of the Universe, imagine that your child is asleep and having a dream of having a nightmare at night. They're in bed and they're having a nightmare. And so would you go in and grab them and shake them and say, wake up, it's only a dream? No, because they would wake up in terror. But if you softly whispered in their ear, wake up, it's only a dream, you're safe at home. That whisper is the Holy Spirit. That's God's whisper to us that we're safe at home. We've never left the kingdom. We've never left heaven. We're just having a dream of terror. And so the Holy Spirit is like having a foot in both worlds, in reality and in illusion, to help guide us out of the illusion back to home, back to what is real. And so the term, quote, soul, unquote, is not used except in direct biblical quotations because of its highly controversial nature. It would, however, be equivalent of, quote, spirit, unquote, with the understanding that being of God, it is eternal and was never born. And so, because the word soul, the reason that it's not in the Course very much at all is because it can be very controversial, because we think we have a soul. I mean, an individual soul. Each person, your soul, my soul. Well, that's an idea of separation. How can we have separate souls? There is only one soul that we call spirit. But of course, the ego, what does it do? It takes truth, it divides and subdivides it. Now we seem to have these separate minds and separate souls. And now we have to evolve the soul. That was, the soul, like the mind, the whole mind is already created. It doesn't need to evolve. But, look what the ego did with that whole term. So that's why the word soul is not used very much in the Course at all. The other part of the mind is entirely illusory, meaning the ego mind, and makes only illusions. Spirit retains the potential for creating, but its will, which is God's, seems to be imprisoned while the mind is not unified. We think we have free will here, but an illusion is illusion. It's an illusion. If we're just choosing one illusion over another, thinking that we have freedom of choice or free will, when we're in reality, we've imprisoned ourselves in an illusion, thinking we're free. That's insane, but it's clever, very clever, of the ego, I should say. Creation continues unabated because that is the will of God. So we can't change the will of God. We believe we can, but, I have my free will. See, I don't have to follow God's will. I have my free. I can choose this illusion and that illusion, but it's still an illusion. This will is always unified and therefore has no meaning in this world. It has no opposite and no degrees, which is, this whole world is about opposites and degrees. So that's why it's an illusion. We can't change the will of God, but we can deny it. And that's what we're doing here. The mind can be right or wrong, depending on the voice to which it listens. That's why, and of course it talks about the right mind and wrong mind. And the right mind being of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the voice of the right mind. The ego is the voice of the wrong mind. And it's just called wrong mind because it's the mind that thinks it is separate from its source. And that can never be true in reality, but we can make up an illusion and call it reality and think it is true when it never is, never can be. Right-mindedness listens to the Holy Spirit, forgives the world, and through Christ's vision sees the real world in its place. This is the final vision, the last perception, the condition in which God takes the final step himself. Here, time and illusions end together. So talking about the real world, Jesus also calls it the happy dream. It's the same thing. It's still a dream, but it's a very close reflection of heaven, a very close reflection of reality. That's why it's called the real world. It's like the final part of the dream, that it's gentle awakening part of the dream before we awaken into reality. Because when we're in a world of terror, when there's so much fear and all the nightmarish things that goes on here, trying to wake up in terror, we would wake up in terror, because it's like we can't wake up in the dream. We have to wake up from the dream. So this is a gentle awakening process. The Course in Miracles is laid out beautifully. And if we're willing to follow that guidance into awakening gently from this dream of terror. And so we just have to, first recognize it. Yeah, this is a dream. And we don't have to understand how that can be. We just have to be willing to open our minds to that. The Holy Spirit will show us, and then eventually we'll start to come to that recognition. Yeah, this can't be real. This is just a dream of terror that we're going through this whole process of awakening from. And so, continues here. Wrong-mindedness listens to the ego and makes illusions. perceiving sin and justifying anger, and seeing guilt, disease, and death as real. Both this world and the real world are illusions because, so both this world and the real world are illusions because right-mindedness merely overlooks or forgives what never happened. And so and Jesus talks about in the Course in Miracles, to forgive means to overlook. We're overlooking the illusions and to look at truth, to look at what is real. Because as long as we are perceiving an illusion, what's not real, and we want to make it real, we can't forgive it because it's real to us. We have to be willing to overlook it or to recognize it. Maybe this is an illusion. Maybe this isn't real. And now now that I'm willing to overlook it in that way, I can see truth and forgive. And that makes that forgiving what I thought was so real for so long, it makes that much easier and possible to us because we're just finally willing to overlook what we thought was real, but it was just illusion all this time. And we're just punishing ourselves by hanging on to it. Let's see. Therefore, it is not the one-mindedness of the Christ mind, meaning the wrong-mindedness. It's not the one-mindedness of the Christ mind whose will is one with God's. In this world, the only remaining freedom is the freedom of choice between two choices or two voices. So that's the only power of the mind of choice we have here. We can either choose the ego and the wrong-mindedness and all the illusions of that, or choose the Holy Spirit, which is the voice of truth, for God, and the voice of reality. So those are only choices. The ego would have us believe that we have all these seeming choices in this world, but again, an illusion is illusion is illusion. We're not getting anywhere by making those choices, thinking all that's doing is keeping us stuck in the illusory world and not getting anywhere. So it's not a choice at all. It's a choice for imprisonment instead of a choice for freedom. Okay, so will is not involved in perception at any level and has nothing to do with choice. Consciousness. This is interesting about consciousness, what Course talks about consciousness. Consciousness is the receptive mechanism receiving messages from above or below, from the Holy Spirit or the ego. Now, what Jesus also talks about consciousness in the text, of Course in Miracles, is he says that consciousness is the first split introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. So consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. And the ego is just a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. And that's, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because, today's all the talk in the spiritual communities and even psychological communities is about consciousness and raising your consciousness and thinking that consciousness is the truth or has us become more aware of truth. It can be used for that, depending on the ego, the Holy Spirit, but it's still, we can't escape the realm of perception with consciousness. It's still it's a mechanism of the separation, and as long as we are stuck in that thinking that we can use consciousness to raise ourselves out of this, we'll be stuck in it. So, but again, it can be used by the ego to keep us stuck, or the Holy Spirit to help us, awaken from this by getting on the right path. So, continue with the consciousness here. Consciousness has levels, and awareness can shift quite dramatically, but it cannot transcend the perceptual realm. At its highest, it becomes aware of the real world and can be trained to do so increasingly. Yet the very fact that it has levels and can be trained demonstrates that it cannot reach knowledge. So again, consciousness, I know we like to think of that as a way that we can raise our consciousness and become more and more spiritual, but it can be used to keep us stuck here too. So just recognizing that, because you think of the word consciousness, the definition of it is to be conscious of something other than yourself. So that's a separation idea. But anything we make here that the ego would use to keep us stuck here, the Holy Spirit can use for us to guide us out of this dream of separation. So it keeps coming down to what teacher are we choosing? There's only two choices, the ego or the Holy Spirit, the illusion or truth, the darkness or the light. So being aware of that, then we can use consciousness as a mechanism to help us make the right choice for the right teacher and the right mind. So anyway, I wanted to share this with you about the mind and spirit and what the Course in Miracles is talking about using those terms, because it's very, very, it becomes very handy and relative to when we're in our studies with the Course in Miracles and how to understand it, to use that for us to help awaken us from this dream. So I hope this helps. And if you have any questions about that or need any kind of clarification, let me know. Just put a comment down the comment section down below. And I hope you like and subscribe to the channel. And please share this if you know somebody it may be helpful for. And anyway, y'all have a wonderful day and be good to each other, okay? And I'll see you in the next video.